Hello and welcome to another episode of Sus Faction.
Today is an Estella-centric episode, and I'm Kyle.
And I'm Isella.
And we're your hosts.
How are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing.
You're doing?
Yeah.
I don't know. We were just talking about, I guess, dietary things, but like my stomach's been crazy last couple weeks. So I switched to cold brew. And one of my teachers that I work with she noticed, she's like, why do you always have coffee with you now in the morning? I said, because I have to wait for it to get cold. Like I have to like put ice in things and I have to do a cold brew. So I just stop at Starbucks. I've been using my gift cards because that's what the students always give you for Christmas. So I've been using my gift cards to get cold brew. And then this morning I Googled like an actual cold brew coffee thing that you can, like a maker for home, because it's less acidic and it has been helping since I switched to cold brew.
That's good.
So, and it doesn't hurt to get some free Starbies.
Right.
So, it's February, which always makes me think of Valentine's Day and love, and I love love. So, I thought we would cover one of the most well-known love stories, Romeo and Juliet.
Sweet.
Two houses.
Of Shakespeare.
Yes. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we pay our scene. From ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. This is the prologue of Romeo and Juliet. And in school, we read and study this play across the United States. But we do not cover the real life events that inspired William Shakespeare.
Right.
So, for all of us reading this in school, we're like, oh, it's just a love story, right? Or, they talk to us about the deeper meanings of what Shakespeare was trying to convey to us.
Mm-hmm.
But
tragedy.
Yeah, but there were real life events that inspired him to write it. The Wars of Roses. The Wars of Roses were a series of English civil wars fought between the houses of Lancaster, represented by the red rose, and York, the white rose. The wars were for control of the English throne. Both branches of the Plantagenet dynasty. The conflict ended with the victory of Henry Tudor at the Battle of Bosworth Field. He married Elizabeth York, uniting the two houses and establishing the Tudor dynasty. And we talked a little bit about Mary Tudor, so a little bit about the Tudors before. Mm-hmm. Not too much, but I gave a short story of Henry VIII. Yeah. And that was the second in the Tudor dynasty after the Wars of Roses. So, both red and white, Lancaster and York, were descendants of King Edward III. The power struggle started when King Henry the Sixth, I'm sorry, I have a typo. When King Henry the Sixth was viewed as weak and mentally unstable to lead, and the powerful nobles began vying for control. It eventually escalated into open warfare. King Edward III reigned from 1312 to 1377. He was called the Black Prince, Edward's eldest son. He died before his father did in 1376. And his son, Richard II, succeeded to the throne ahead of King Edward's other three sons. It skipped an entire generation. And I wrote in here, salty offspring.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being skipped over like that?
Oh my gosh.
So Henry IV, a red rose or Lancaster, deposed Richard in 1399. He reigned, and his son, Henry V, ascended the throne after him. And then in 1422, Henry V died during a military campaign, leaving Henry VI, a baby, to take the throne.
Wow.
Yeah. He's a baby at the time. Um, we've heard other stories of young children left to take the throne,
Yeah.
and
But
but
never
he was an infant.
infant.
He was an infant. All right. Margaret of Anjou married King Henry VI of England on April 23rd, 1445. So they waited 23 years from the time he took the crown to the time they forced him to get married, until they arranged his marriage. So they did wait 23 years. At Titchfield Abbey is where he got married. Their political marriage aimed to end the Hundred Years' War. Quick sidestep. The 100 Years' War was a war fought over 100 years' time. It was a series of sieges and battles, not one long war, but it was between England and France for control of France. All right. Richard of York was Henry VI's advisor. Richard was his uncle.
Yeah.
And he was his advisor. And he was sidelined by Queen Margaret. This is where we get into the Game of Thrones similarities. Because Queen Margaret of Anjou was very similar to the character Cersei in Game of Thrones. Margaret had Richard of York sent to Ireland. He was very upset, and he returned with an army. To quell him, when Henry VI suffered a mental breakdown, Richard of York was appointed as Protector of the Realm. This is similar to Hand of the Queen, or Hand of the King in Game of Thrones. And someone who helps make decisions when the king is unable, or helps advise the king, just on any matters, really. It took Henry about a year to recover, and after he recovered, the Queen convinced him to reverse any reforms that Richard of York had made. So, Richard of York fled and again returned with an army. He had himself and his heirs designated to succeed Henry. Richard, Duke of York, was killed on December 30th, 1460, during the Battle of Wakefield in Yorkshire, England. This was a key clash in the Wars of Roses. He died fighting Lancastrian forces at age 49, famously mocked with a paper crown before and after his death. Ned Stark is meant to represent Richard of York.
Oh, wow.
After Richard was killed, Edward IV, his son, took up his cause and his crown. He backed out of an arranged marriage with a French princess, the same way Robb Stark did to secretly marry a widow. And he alienated his chief ally and supporter, Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, called the Kingmaker, with his decision. So, Neville restored Henry VI, then imprisoned, allowing Edward to recapture the throne. The Lancaster prince killed in battle was Henry VI. Edward IV had a peaceful reign and then died unexpectedly on April 9th, 1483. His 12-year-old son, see, that's a better age,
Yeah.
Edward V, technically succeeded him. However, Edward V was never crowned. He was deposed just months later by his uncle Richard III, who took the throne in June of 1483. Richard declared his nephews to be illegitimate. A quote from Varus says it best: "Power resides where men believe it resides. It's a trick, a shadow on the wall, and a very small man can cast a very large shadow." It's one of my favorite Game of Thrones quotes. So far, a lot of back and forth with these two, the Lancasters and the Yorks. This brings us to 1485. So almost 100 years later. No, a little over 100 years later. from when we first talked about our red-rosed king, King Edward III. So now we're talking about Henry Tudor, Henry VII. Came from France with an army immediately after defeating and killing Richard at the Battle of Bosworth Field. As the first Tudor monarch, he ended the Wars of Roses and established a new dynasty. I love the way the English say dynasty. They say dynasty.
Yeah.
a,
Yes, they do.
new, a new dynasty. Henry VII married Elizabeth of York, joining the two houses of Lancaster and York, and the red and white roses, creating the Tudor dynasty and the Tudor rose. So, it's probably one of my most favorite untold stories of history.
Yeah.
Because we know Game of Thrones. It was huge. A lot of people know it. Whether you've watched it or not, you know what it is.
I only watched the first season. Okay. Yeah.
But you know of it.
Yeah.
And then Romeo and Juliet, because you're kind of probably at this point wondering, why did I bring up Romeo and Juliet? Well, I started this with Romeo and Juliet because it was written by William Shakespeare and was heavily influenced by the Wars of Roses. It had feuding families, the Montagues and the Capulets, and it was also an allegory for civil war and demonstrated a waste of lives and what it was like to have an unstable society. At that time that it was released, the conflict was still fresh in English minds. The Wars of Roses was still fresh in their minds, and the themes really resonated with the English at the time, even though it wasn't written about England.
Right.
Now, Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin has two major families that were influenced by the Wars of Roses. The Starks represent the York family, and the Lannisters are very much the Lancasters.
Mhm.
The Starks and Lannisters fight for Westeros the same way the Lancasters and the Yorks were involved in trying to win the English throne. Both Game of Thrones and the Wars of Roses have noble families, intricate alliances, betrayal, and the rise of a new dynasty. However, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending what side you're on, there were no zombies or dragons in the 14th and 15th century of England.
That we know of.
Right, that we know of. We were not there. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. There is no middle ground. And that's what I have on the War of Roses.
That's cool, though. Like, I didn't know that William Shakespeare had been influenced by anything when he wrote Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah. Someone had told me this. I'm friends with a history student. He's in his master's program and he wants to be a history professor. And he lives in Chicago. And he told me this, and I was like, really? And so I, of course, was like, I need to do some more research on this. And then I just fell in love with the story and the fact that it influenced Game of Thrones, which I also love. I was very excited. I was like, oh, we're doing this. I actually wrote Wars of Roses on our list before we even started the podcast, before we ever recorded our first episode. This was on list of things I wanted to share.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love how the names are so similar.
I know. And like, I didn't even know it was based off of anything true. I guess because it was so like fantastical, it didn't seem like it was, but it's very closely based, and a lot of the characters are very similar. That Margaret and Cersei are both these very controlling queens.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I didn't see anything that like talked about how she looked, but I did see a picture and it looked like she was either a redhead or a blonde.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they chose based off of that. I'm sure that his character was very closely based off of Queen Margaret.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I had on the War of Roses. It was a long war, but it happened so long ago that there were only key moments, and for every key moment I had to do like 3 different searches just to find information.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It was a long time ago,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Mauser.
Well, thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
And join us again next week for another episode. We post every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And remember, trust no one,
Question
question everything.
everything. And if you want to send us your stories to read on the podcast, you can reach us at susfactionpod@outlook.com. Again, if you want to send us your stories on anything creepy, spooky, whatever, historical, anything like that, you can reach us at susfactionpod@outlook.com. And we also have an Instagram.
Our Instagram is at susfactionpod. I post a teaser for the week on Monday, telling you what that week is going to be about. We have in our bio links to the Amazon, YouTube, and Spotify pages. We also have a Patreon where we have our OG tier, is what we're calling it. And with OG access, you will have early, ad free, and exclusive content.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, thank you for listening.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.